Thanks for joining us on SPORTSWOMEN Australia podcast, bringing you the biggest names, brightest stars and power brokers of women's sport in Australia. Tiffany Cherry with you alongside my regular co-host Amanda Salantian. Amanda, today we're joined by another Amanda, the inaugural captain of the AFLW GWS Giants. Amanda Farrugia is on the line. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda.
Thanks so much for having me on, girls.
Now, otherwise known as the Fridge, first question straight off the bat, how did you get that nickname?
Well, when I went to my first club football training session, there's a custom that every new player has to introduce themselves to the group, and when I said my name, I obviously was a little bit nervous and said it too quickly, and Farrugia came out as Fridge, so it is stuck ever since, so I cannot shake that nickname.
Oh, that is one of the best nicknames. Like it very much.
So, Amanda, I have to ask, so you're born in Sydney, grown up in Sydney, a female, Maltese descent. How did you come to play AFL football?
Yeah, I came to footy quite late in life. I started when I was 25, so the story goes that I was a pretty sporty kid, tried to get my hands on any kind of sport that I could all the way through primary school and high school. And in my mid-20s, I started getting quite bored of doing the same old sports that I'd done all my life, and I wanted to try something different. So I wanted to try a game that involved kicking, and I always enjoyed kicking the footy around in the backyard with my brother when I was a kid. So I thought maybe girls can play AFL now. This was in 2011.
Wow.
So I went onto Google and did a search to see if women could play contact sports, because I had no idea. And then discovered there was a whole competition in Sydney at the time called the SPOFL, which was the Sydney Women's AFL. And I rocked up to my first training session, which was at Macquarie University, and I've played for them ever since.
You've been doing really well, so we hear at Macquarie University, having won the Mostyn Medal, is it? So the AFL Sydney Best and Fairest 3 times. So can you tell us a bit about that?
I'm pretty committed to Mac Uni, so I try and play all the games when I can. This year was a bit different, though, because the Giants had 5 invitational games in the VFL, so I was away a little bit. But, yeah, I've been lucky enough to poll votes, so I don't know why that's the case. I'm not particularly friendly with the umpires all the time. So, yeah, I've been very, very fortunate to be around a really great group of girls. We've been well coached. Any success is really the whole team's, not mine.
And as you said, Amanda, you came to the sport late in life, 2012, before you really sort of hit your straps, I suppose, and started winning a lot of the accolades. You had a knee reconstruction. Did you think about giving it up at the time? Was it a bit too much that you were playing an amateur sport?
Yeah, definitely. And to add insult to injury, I did the knee injury when I was playing AFL Nines as well, and it was like a pre-season tournament, so it wasn't even a proper game. It was pretty frustrating because up until that point, I'd never really sustained any injury playing sport, aside from a few bumps and bruises and I think a broken finger when I was a kid. So it was my first real taste of what a long-term injury felt like, and yeah, I was pretty angry. I thought that kind of thing would never happen to me, and I thought I was a pretty resilient sort of person. But once I had the surgery, I just used the rehab process as a real driver to get back to playing football. And once you start running again, then changing direction, you actually get really, really hungry and have a big appetite to get back and play football again. And I was really committed to get back because I had a best time ever in 2011, and I fortunately made it back and haven't had any other knee injuries since, touch wood.
So 5.5 or so years later, Gil McLachlan stands up and calls the AFLW 3 years early and says, we're going to bring it forward from 2020 to 2017. What goes through your mind at that point in time when you hear that?
Well, it's different to, I think, a lot of the girls who are based in AFL-dominant states and territories. In Sydney, there's not a lot of talk about AFL, and also you don't have a lot of exposure to the best players. So at that point, I thought to myself, this draft situation, am I even really good enough to consider nominating for the draft? At that point, I hadn't played for New South Wales, which was, I guess, kind of the best opportunity for you to compare yourself to other athletes in the country, and there was a lot of self-doubt kind of roaming around in my mind because I hadn't had a lot of exposure to the game. I hadn't had a lot of exposure to elite coaching or just elite facilities. So I just thought I could be coming in here a bit older, quite underdone. Really, there was absolutely nothing to lose. And once I got my head around what was involved. I just said, you've got to throw your hat in the ring. This is something that you'll regret if you don't do it. So I nominated for the draft, and here we are.
So what pushed you to nominate yourself? Were there people in your life that were supporting you and encouraging you to nominate yourself, or did you decide, this is what I'm going to go for?
Personally, there's a lot of self-doubt, and I think a lot of female athletes have that at their various stages throughout their career. So I needed some backing, I needed some support, and my family and my club footy coaches at the time were very supportive, and at no point did they ever give any kind of indication that I shouldn't do it. It was all very much, you can do it because you work hard and you've got some talent there. And I thought to myself, really, you nominate, no one's any wiser if you don't get drafted. It's just kind of throw your hat in the ring. And then once I did, I was obviously very stoked. And I think it's after a year of playing AFLW that you realise how much hard work is involved to be a professional athlete. And now 4 years into the system, it's much easier to kind of cope with the demands of being a semi-professional athlete.
So you throw your hat in the ring and the GWS Giants call out your name. You pick 8. You end up coming in at the 64th pick. So you're down the ranks in essence, as you talked about with all the other girls in front of you. Yet you are chosen by your peers to become the inaugural captain of the Giants. How did you come into that system and win over really the love and support and conviction of your teammates in that period of time?
Yeah, it's quite weird, to be honest, because once I started training with the club and started to get to know the girls, it was really just to work as hard as I possibly could to play. So I was just hoping to get a game, really. I wanted to get better as a footballer. I wanted to use the resources that I had at my disposal to get the best out of myself. I'm not genetically that gifted. I'm not super tall. I don't have a family of footballers. So really I just had to kind of, knuckle down and extract the best out of myself what I possibly could. And I guess somewhere along the way, the players responded to some of that, perhaps. I generally get along with most of the players pretty well, but at the same time, I'm fairly honest. And I think there's a way to go about interacting with people who are really fighting for the same dream as you, I guess, so to speak. There's no hierarchy at the Giants, and that was something that was pretty well established very early on. No egos and no hierarchy. So, I just tried to invest in getting to know the players as much as I could because they were going to be my teammates. And, we were all battling away up at the Giants, for the same cause, which was to try and be taken seriously as a football team. So I guess somewhere along the line, the players thought that I had the capacity to lead them. And, when I got voted in, I was completely shocked. Like I said to you before, I was just hoping to be able to play in round one and kind of went into that leadership role quite blind in the sense that I wasn't quite sure of what leadership role at the AFLW level would take. I'd captained my club footy team for a year or two, but, the demands there were much more low level compared to what was required at the Giants. And but I was willing to try anything to make myself the best leader and the best player I possibly could. I'm proud of what I've achieved in that space, and I hope to do it in season 2020 as well.
You've actually described captaincy as the greatest privilege, especially given that it is chosen by your peers. Can you've touched on it a little bit there, but can you describe it, what it's like to captain the club?
A lot of the time it is quite demanding. Before a training session, you do your best to try and make sure everybody's faring pretty well, making sure that everyone's in a good mood, in the right mindset to get out there on the training track and get the best out of themselves. You have to lead the standards at training all the time, so you're constantly kind of looking at everybody else, making sure that they're doing what they need to do, but all the while making sure that you're meeting your own personal standards and the team standards too. And it is very much a role that requires you to think outwardly. So some people find that difficult, that they can't pay as much attention to themselves. I actually find it beneficial that you're not so focused on your own, self-doubts or inner thoughts and that kind of stuff. You can think more about others. And, I really enjoy building good relationships with people and helping people get the best out of their own football ability. And it's difficult in female sport. There's a lot of trials and tribulations that girls go through and sacrifices they have to make. And, I do value helping people try and work their way through difficult times. And whether that be as a result of my teaching background, I'm not sure, but I think that has provided a benefit to me being able to execute my leadership roles as best as possible. And I think at the end of the day, you just have to respect other people. I think that's the biggest thing, and that's whether or not you're talking to the the chairman of the board, Tony Shepherd, or you're holding the door open for the cleaner when he comes in at 8 o'clock at night, whatever it is, they're all people who are trying to get you to the same place, which is to be successful. And, I like I said before, it is the greatest honour, particularly to be voted by your peers.
Yeah, you did just mention that you're a high school teacher. I'm a teacher myself as well, and I know how difficult it can be controlling a group of 25 kids. What sorts of those skills have you transferred across into your leadership specifically? What aspects of that has been brought across?
I don't think it's ever been. It's not quite perfected in a school environment. Really, whatever you say goes. And I'm at a school where the girls are quite well behaved, so to speak. So they're very much willing to toe the line, and whatever you say goes. And I think one of the most important things that being in a school in Parramatta and Western Sydney is that there is a diversity in terms of the nature of the students that you have, personality, backgrounds, interests. The same thing happens in a football team. You've got a bunch of different people that all have different qualities that are equally as valuable as each other that you have to get to know and build relationships with. So I think the investment in people that happens in a school context translates nicely over into a football context, and also understanding difference. I've grown up in Western Sydney all my life. I understand that everybody has, like I said, a different background, a different way of thinking about things, but in both contexts there is still an expected standard. So at school, you can have your differences, but at the end of the line, we expect you to do X, Y, and Z in order to meet the demands of the school. And it's the same thing at football. You can bring your individuality, but at the same time, we've got clear team goals and objectives that we want to make sure that we adhere to ensure that we get the best out of ourselves. And to be honest, it's probably more difficult in the football context to get the players to toe the line in relation to those things than it is in the school context, because they're adults, and sometimes they feel as though they are an adult and they can, just decide their own path. But we need to make sure that the players understand the importance of doing the small things well. And that's a work in progress, like I said, because you've got girls who've been in elite system for 4 years, whereas the boys have been geared for that system since they were about 12 or 11 years old. So it's harder work, I think, to get everybody to understand expectations, but it's something that I value pretty highly.
Talk about individuals and their personalities. What about the difficult of Sydney? You've grown up, as you just said, in Western Sydney. You're living there now, and you're playing for the team that represents that area. How difficult is it, though, in terms of the attention that football gets or doesn't get in Sydney? I've lived there a number of times and worked in journalism, and I know firsthand in terms of how difficult it was to try and even get stories on the AFL. Do you find that as a blessing at times, or is it still something that you really want to turn around and make sure that those people that are there in the West and then in Greater Sydney at large choose football as one of their sports that they love to watch?
Yeah, I think there's pluses and minuses of being in the Sydney market. It's very competitive. There are a lot of sports that try and vie for prime time, and you've got cricket, soccer, netball, rugby league, rugby union, and AFL's coming to the mix now. And I feel safe playing in Sydney. You're probably a little bit more sheltered from scrutiny and naysayers and that kind of thing. And that's definitely one benefit. I'm currently staying in a hotel room in Melbourne, and it just feels like a little bit more of a volatile football landscape down here, and everybody's willing to, ride the highs and the highs with you when you're doing well, but they're really ready to slam you pretty hard when you're not doing so well. And I think we're a bit sheltered from that up there. But at the same time, I feel for the Giants, because they're a club you've got to be inside the four walls of the club to know how brilliant it is. And I think that it doesn't get the credit it deserves in the broader community because the media doesn't give it enough attention. But at the same time, this is the opportunity that we have now as a team in the AFL Grand Final to really showcase what we've done and what we've got. And, I'm obviously, speaking about this on the back of the boys' success, that their success is off the back of all the other people that work in the organisation, in the footy department, admin. As the girls team, we see the boys all the time, doing the hard yards, and the camaraderie that they have, imprints on us. And I really do hope that the club will be taken seriously as a legitimate AFL powerhouse, and hopefully it'll awaken a lot of the people in the broader New South Wales community to jump on board our team, because there's a lot of heart there. There's a lot of people who've been invested for a really long time, and we're there to win just as much as Richmond are tomorrow.
I think those who generally follow football know the talent definitely within the Giants, certainly running out there tomorrow. And in terms of, as you said, but taking them seriously, being able to take it that one step further or a couple of steps further. What about the feeling within the camp? What is the feeling like, if you could take us inside the GWS camp at the moment? As you said, you're down in Melbourne, obviously enjoying the festivities and the build-up to the grand final. Can you take us into the inner sanctum?
Yeah, so I haven't had any particular interactions with the boys since I've been down here, but you see them around the grounds and you see the staff, and there is a very good positive vibe around the place, but all the while understanding that there is a huge job to be done on Saturday, and everything really is stacked against us. We've only been around for a certain number of years, 8 years, and Richmond have been here, done that many times before. So, but aside from all that, it's just understanding that it's going to come down to which team is harder at it on Saturday. And I think our boys have come out the other end of a very tumultuous year. We've had a lot of setbacks in terms of injury, and there's been some individual stories that are quite inspiring, really, to reflect on guys like Stephen Cornelio and Brett Zalidio and Callan Ward. Like, these guys are the heart and soul of our club, and the fact that they're not playing but the team has held steadfast and still being able to perform on the weekend just goes to show you the heart that the team has. So, look, I hope more than anything that tomorrow they get what they deserve, which is a win. And but even if they don't, I'll still be proud of them nonetheless.
Were you taken back when Stephen Cornelio put his hand up and midweek said, "I'm out"?
I was secretly hoping that he would get up for the game. I've had the opportunity to speak with Stephen quite a few times and sit alongside him at various functions, and there is no greater gentleman in the GWS camp than Stephen Cornelio. But the fact that he called himself out to not play during the week, well before the coaches had to have that conversation with him, or the conditioning staff had to have that conversation with him, it's just reflective of the kind of guy he is. It's not for show. It's genuinely who the guy is. He is a selfless man. He would do anything for the club and wants the club to succeed more than anyone that I've seen in the whole organisation. So, I'm sad for him that he's not going to be there, but he is amongst the boys at the moment, and I think they'll get a lot of benefit out of him being around and being a presence.
Do you have any role models or people that you idolise within the AFLW? Like, you speak so highly of the GWS team, both your female counterparts and the male counterparts. What about throughout the competition? Is there anybody in different teams that you really look up to? Yeah,
look, there are players who I look at and think, you're a phenomenal athlete. And I think it's really important to look at the whole person and what they've achieved. And look, I mean, she's probably been the face of AFLW ever since its first utterings of coming into existence. But, I mean, you look at what Daisy Pearce has done for many, many years. She is a true champion of the game. She just seems to be able to cram absolutely everything into her life.
Including twins.
Probably the hardest role ever is motherhood, and she's just decided to not just have one baby but have two. Or she didn't decide to. She kind of no one plans to have twins. But she's taken it all in her stride, and I had the chance to catch up with her a little bit last night at the NABOS kick dinner, and she seems to be going really well. She's training really hard, and I can't imagine how difficult it is to focus on having two children but also preparing to compete again in a semi-professional contact sport while being the captain of your club. So she's a role model for pretty much anyone in the country who works, tries to juggle life. I'm not talking about athletes, I'm talking about people in general. She's a living example of how you can cram a lot into your life if you really want to.
One thing that Daisy's been quite vocal about, Amanda, has been the fixture for the women and what the AFL is doing. I really want to get your thoughts on the two-conference system, where we're going with the 4 teams coming in next year, and how you see it running best, whether you think having the 2 conferences and the teams playing within that conference, or would you like to see the conferences playing the opposite conference and then coming back for finals, or a different system altogether? What's the best formula from your perspective?
Look, the players at the moment are in discussions with the PA trying to negotiate what's happening in the future. I mean, personally, I'm the kind of believer that things will take the right course in an appropriate time frame, which means that to expect to be playing everybody once at this stage is maybe a little bit premature. I think the competition needs a little bit more time. in order for that to happen, but it's important for the players to make sure that the AFL does understand that is what we want in the future. I'm a patient person in that regard. I am fine for the competition to exist as it is. Ideally, I would love to play everybody once. Ideally, I would love the season to be longer, but I also understand the implications of that from a financial point of view, logistics point of view, and a timing of the season point of view. You know, at the end of the day, I'm a full-time PE teacher and I play football on the side because full-time teaching pays the bills and football doesn't. So, you know, but then again, there are going to be people who want to commit everything in their heart and soul to being able to play football all the time. And for those people, I want to make sure that they can have that opportunity in the near future. So, you know, as players, we're banding together to advocate for a competition that's a bit more extensive in the near future. But like I said before, no one's banging down the door at AFL House saying we want to be paid $500,000 a year and we want 18 rounds of footy. So I think there's a bit of misconception in the broader community that the women are always asking for more, but I think that they need to understand that this is something that we're planning for the future on, and there are always discussions taking place between players and PA and the AFL to make sure that they understand what we need in the years to come.
Just on the future of the AFLW, so next year there's going to be 4 new teams added to the competition. Obviously, that's fantastic for the competition in general, but how do you feel about that as a GWS player? Because as we know, 2 new teams entered the competition last year, and that may have had a bit of an effect on your team's performance. So how do you feel about those new introductions heading into 2020?
We're in a unique position in the Giants at New South Wales because people have to nominate for our club and there are no other New South Wales teams that they could be drafted to, whereas I think that the difficulty lies with Victorian teams where draft picks or the order of draft picks become a little bit more pressing. I mean, at the end of the day, the more football clubs, the more memberships and the more AFLW will be a talking point across the country. But obviously on the flip side of that, you've got to find 120 extra players for new teams that are at the standard required to make sure that the product of the AFLW is exciting and viable and interesting to watch. So I'm hoping that the standard will continue to improve next year. I think it will. As a player who's 4 years into the system and the program now, we kind of know what it takes to be, the quality and standard of semi-professional sport. But all those other teams are very well aware of what we've been doing for the last few years, and they'll make sure that their athletes are just as ready and focused and conditioned to compete at the highest standard. So it may be more challenging for those in the first year as it was for us in our first year, but I think they will make sure that they meet the standard pretty quickly.
So give us an insight now into GWS in terms of the AFLW. As you said, it was a challenge. First season, 2017, you guys finished on the bottom of the ladder, but then you climbed up to 4th, which was a great season in 2018, and then probably struggled a little bit last year, finishing 3rd in your conference. But if you marry it all up, you're down the ladder with regards to the entire competition. Where are you guys seeing yourselves for next season?
I guess the beauty of the football competition of the AFLW is that it's really anyone's game if they want it to be. And I think our difficulty last year was we lacked a little bit of cohesion, and we rectified that too late. So it was a little bit too little too late. And we had a really good back end of the season, but our first half was a bit disjointed. So we're very well aware that we need to build connection, and the part of the benefit of us being in the VFLW program was that we had much more contact with the playing group throughout the off-season, or technically the off-season in the winter months. So that's allowed us to stay united and stay together, because all the other football clubs, they have access to their players all year round. So that's been a big plus. So pretty much been in contact with a lot of the AFLW all year. We've also been doing a little bit of extra work in terms of our, running and weights and that sort of stuff. And I think the girls are all kind of bought in quite early on to make sure that there's improvement there. We've also got an excellent coaching staff at our club. So, look, anything is really possible next year. We're very excited about the new season, but it's still a little bit of a while to go yet.
Are there any young guns in the team that we should be keeping an eye out for in 2020?
Yeah, without a doubt, Elise Parker is going to be a star of the future. She already is a star, to be honest with you, and is pretty unlucky to miss out on the NAB Rising Star Award last year. For a kid her age, she's stronger than most of the girls on our team, and she's only 18 years of age. She has a brilliant tank on her, and I think one of her best attributes is her temperament. She's a great young person. She's smart. She's willing to listen. She's coachable, and she's really hungry to get the most out of herself. So I think she's going to have a very, very long career in the AFLW, and I've definitely pegged her as a future captain of the club.
So what about you, Amanda? What are your favourite memories so far of your playing career? What are the ones that really make the hair stand on end on you, when you think about it?
It's definitely my experiences at the Giants, playing at the top level and sharing it with a bunch of girls that you just battle away with is pretty special. And, we had a win last year against the Western Bulldogs in Canberra. We loved going down and playing in Canberra, and I think the Doggies ended up winning the comp that year, so to beat them was pretty special. And it was a night where no one really thought that we'd ever get anywhere near beating them, and to have the upset win in that game was a brilliant night. And, all the stars were having a wonderful game, and the crowd was really involved with it. And I guess I remember walking off the field in that game thinking, this is what it's all about, and this is how brilliant it can feel to win for games of football. And I don't think I've had a moment in my football life where I've, felt that excited about just, winning an ordinary game. So that was pretty special, and I do hope we have more success in 2020, but time will tell.
And you girls are lucky that you don't have to play in the winter when it snows in Canberra. And let's just look at, now some people are going to be listening to this podcast after the fact, being tomorrow in the AFL Grand Final, but we're talking to you on the eve of the AFL Grand Final, so I'd love to get your thoughts on how it's going to play out. What's your prediction, and how is it going to actually play? Yeah,
I think it's going to be furious. The Tigers are renowned for their in and under work, their small forwards, their little mosquito fleet of players, and they're a very hard contested football side, and they're led really well by a brilliant captain in Trent Cotchin, and I'm sure Dusty will be out and about doing his thing as well. But the Giants have kind of got class all over the field, and we've had a lot of players emerge this year as true talents of the competition in Jeremy Finlayson. Jeremy Cameron's had a brilliant year. Brent Daniels has been brilliant the last few weeks. And then you've got the class of guys like Josh Kelly and Phil Davis in the back line, and Nick Haynes has had a wonderful season as well. So I think it's going to be fairly even. It's going to be hot at the beginning, but my pick is for the Giants to win by a lot.
Oh, a lot, all right.
And who do you think's going to take home the Norm Smith?
I'm going to go with a bit of an outside chance and say someone like Nick Haynes.
Okay.
Nick Haynes, gun. So, Amanda, I'll just let you in a little secret. I work at the Tigers part-time, so the Tigers be the Giants. Well, let's just see. May the best team win, let's just say that. And whatever happens, as you say, it's going to be frenetic. I certainly predict that early in the game. It is going to be hot. Amanda Farrugia, the inaugural captain of the GWS Giants in the AFLW, and certainly a star of the competition, and looking forward to a great 2020 and beyond.
Thanks, ladies. Have a great one.
Thanks, Amanda. And you can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at SPORTSWOMEN AUSTRALIA, and on Twitter at SPORTSWOMEN AU. And make sure you tune in next week for an absolute star guest.